Northside, here is a poor quality picture from a page in a camper booklet from 2004 when I was the dean of a week of camp. I'm in the top picture, and Brennan Conklin, who was in his first year of youth ministry in Pittsburgh, Kansas, is in the bottom picture. I am so grateful that our paths crossed again 21 years later in 2025 when he led our leadership team through strategic planning and then joined our staff team as our executive chief of staff. Brennan's role at Northside is to align staff, systems, strategy to advance Northside's mission of making disciples who enjoy, follow, and share Jesus. And I'm excited that Brennan will speak to you today about godly courage and specifically what that looks like in a godly man through the character study of Daniel. Brennan and his wife, Jana, have 3 children, one training to be a farrier, one in high school, and one which has gone on to be with the Lord. So Northside, will you give Brennan a warm welcome as he comes to speak today?
Well, good morning. Thank you very much. As was mentioned, my name is Brennan. If we haven't met, I think basically the highlights Wayne already took care of. Like everything else about me is I'm a nerd. So I like books, I like baseball games, and I like my old man chair. So I just like to, sit there, read, all of that kind of stuff. So if you like baseball and you like a good cup of coffee while you sit in a chair and read during the game, let's hang out. We won't talk, but let's hang out. It will be amazing. We will do that. But as Wayne said, my wife and I, we've been married 23 years. Jana, we met at Ozark, and we've done ministry in some different places, a lot in the Midwest. We lived in Haiti for a year. We were out in California for about 8 years, and then came back this direction, closer to family. And again, joined a team called Growmentum, where we do help churches with some of the strategy and thinking through staff culture and health, all of that kind of stuff. And that's what brought me here, is just being able to partner with Northside and be on the team, the staff as the executive minister. And it's been awesome. You know this even more than I do, but I mean, the staff here are amazing, just incredible. And the things that have been done, I mean, God has done so many amazing things, and he continues to do through Northside, and that means through you all. So it's a pleasure and just a joy to be here. And Wayne said, we are going to talk over, we've been looking at these characteristics, just over this kind of summer series, and we're going to look at courage. And the focus for a little bit, as I was kind of just studying and going through it, was the courage and looking in the direction of in a man, what does that look like? But honestly, as I kept studying, it became pretty universal that this courage is for all of us. And I'm kind of going that direction because I don't know what happens when you hear the word courage, but for me, a lot of memories pop up. A lot of moments that just the way I kind of think about it is, I wish I would have had courage. The moments that maybe I did, they're not the ones that pop up, but the ones I wish I would have been a little bit more bold. I wish I would have taken that step. I wish I would have said that phrase. They kind of flood my mind as I look at the word courage. And I think a part of that is because every story, every book, every movie that we get into, we look at the character take a step of courage. I mean, you may be I'm totally into rom-coms, and it's did they ask the other person out? That kind of courage, did they make the phone call? Or maybe you're into action, and it's did the, protagonist go against the antagonist, and they won, and they needed to go and fight this battle. All of these things. Did Frodo take the ring and go to Mordor? If you don't know the answer to that, you're way behind. But nonetheless, it's just, we want to see in our stories people with courage. And we like to place ourselves in that character. And to say when the moment happens that we need it, that we would live it. That we would step in to that courage. Well, we're going to look at a person. We could look at so many people throughout scriptures and just moments that they stepped into courage, but we are going to look at the person of Daniel. So if you want to, not all of the scriptures are going to be on the screen. So if you have a Bible, you can open it up to Daniel 6. We're not there yet, but you can be prepped and ready. Or if you have YouVersion, you can jump on that. Or here's just one of the things that I like to do. I'm going to read also these scriptures, and maybe you just need to receive it. Sometimes there's something about hearing the words of God that are just as powerful as reading it. And we'll go there, but I want to give a little bit of context of what is going on with Daniel. Because Daniel is at a particular point in history for the people of Israel that's not amazing. So they had gone into the promised land. They had eventually conquered the promised land. They had built a kingdom there connected to God. And they had David reign and Solomon reign, and a lot of things started to go downhill. And what happened within the kingdom, it split into two. There was the northern and the southern. And both of them had these just cycles of like, I think I'll connect to God, but then they would fall short. And God said, hey, you need to be close to me. And they're like, yeah. And they would keep going away. And they would come close and they would keep going away. And one of the punishments that he said, it will come, is you will be taken over. And the northern kingdom was taken over first by the Syrians, and then later, the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, where Daniel would have been, was taken over by the Babylonians. Now, the Babylonians, this is kind of their MO when they would take over, is unfortunately, a lot of people would be killed, and then they would put a lot of people into servanthood. And then they would take the strongest and best looking and smartest young men to indoctrinate. So like if you just want to imagine like me, like that would be, I'm just kidding. It's like half of you are like, yeah, I don't know what to do with that. It's okay. I'm joking. I've seen a mirror. But they take these and they bring them with the king, into the kingdom, and they're going to go through a schooling. What we look in history, probably about 3 years, that they're going to be indoctrinated by words, by food, by exercise. Like, you are going to become a Babylonian. They're going to change their names from whatever culture to have Babylonian names. That's why we even see in Daniel, you go through the chapters and you're like, who are we talking about sometimes? Because we're going to see Babylonian names and we're going to see their Hebrew names. But they want them to become proud and following Babylonians. That's where we find Daniel. He's been brought in. One of the smart, one of the young, one of the handsome, one of the strong. And he's brought in to learn and be schooled by the king's leaders. Now, we're actually going to go to chapter 6, but I preface all of this to say there are so many moments, even from when Daniel was young. So in chapter 1, we're probably looking at a Daniel that's about 15 years old. And we see a moment where he even like stands up, right? He says, I don't want to be defiled by anything. Like, I'm not going to eat the food that you promote because my God would not want me to. He tests it. He works through it. He has a courageous moment right there. He stands into it and it all works out and God is glorified. Well, we go on in some of his friends, eventually in chapter 3, right? We looked at a scripture that was up there that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're not going to bow to Nebuchadnezzar's idol, and they get thrown into a fiery furnace, and they live. And God is with them, and they come out, and then Nebuchadnezzar praises God, and he is glorified. And at that time, we don't know exactly why Daniel's not there, but we're probably talking about a 20-year-old Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. By the time we get to chapter 6, and we're dealing with Daniel in the lion's den and the kings that have gone and been taken over, and now the Medes and all of this kind of stuff, we're probably dealing with a 60-year-old Daniel. And here's one thing that I can see throughout his life. He was courageous. he had something that was different about him. And it wasn't a boldness and a courageous in and of himself. It was one that was connected to God. So how do we live that out? How do we join in that story? How do we have that courageous living? Well, I'm going to just talk about like what I see in that and what we can do to have that kind of courageous life. And the first is, and it's going to be up on the screen, is public courage starts with private conviction. See, it always starts in private. We always see the moment, right? We see the game-ending shot. We see the speech that is just like, wow, like I want to go, like I want to follow. We always see the pinnacle moment. But all of those moments start with a private conviction. And you look at that conviction, it's kind of like a practice. It's a habit that is lived out. And Daniel has that. See, Daniel, what we're going to do, we're going to go to verse 3, and I'm going to start to read. You can follow along, or you can just listen. Now, Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps. I'm going to stop for a second, because I just said satraps. I hate that word. I just do. This is a side note. This is like not in notes. This isn't anything. But every time I say it, I don't like it. You know, you have those words. Well, this is one of those, so I'm probably going to skip it every time. It's a leader. It's an administrator. It's a worker, right? So someone who works for the king. But man, one day, it is one of my heaven questions. Like, how do you actually say that? Because I don't think anyone says it right. There you go. That was free. By I don't want to say it, satraps, by his exponential qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. I'm going to stop for a second. Here's what's going on. The king loves Daniel because Daniel is amazing at what he does. He's a great leader. He's a great decision maker. And here's the deal. He's like, man, I know we have all of these. We have like 120. We have all of these leaders. But honestly, I want to put Daniel over everyone and over the kingdom. At this, the administrators and those other people tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel and his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of God." We're going to stop for a second there. Could you imagine if that was said about you? Like they're trying to find something against Daniel at work to be negligent. Maybe he forgot to file a report. Maybe he didn't send that group text. Or maybe like all of these things, like we're going to find something that he's not good at so that we can take it to the king so we can be like, he shouldn't be over everyone. But they can't find anything. Do you know that person at work? Are you that person at work? He's just like, you're employee of the month every month, and everyone's like, another plaque? Great job, Jerry. We love it. You're awesome. Here's another cake that says, you're great. You know what I mean? And everyone's like, it's always Jerry. He's always winning. He's always getting it. So they're trying to find, well, they can't find anything. So what do? Where do they switch? They go to say, if we can't find anything in his leadership, we will find something to do with his God, with who he follows, because we know he follows a different God than we do. So they go after him. And they are like, we're going to create something. We're going to create a law that is going to trap him. So the administrators and these other people went on a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever." The royal administrators, the prefects, the satraps, the advisors, the governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree to anyone who prays to any other god or human during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty shall throw them in the lion's den. So here's the deal. They're like, we can't find him on here. We know that he loves his God. We're going to say you can't pray to that God. So they get the king on board. They create this law and they say, okay, if you pray to anybody else, you're in the lion's den. That's what's going to happen. And they get it passed. Like, it's good. The king's with it. And they go, and here is what we see Daniel do. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to God, just as he had done before. And I want that to be on the screen. Just hone in on that. Just as he had done before. This was not a new thing for Daniel. He would go and he would pray, and he had a private conviction and habit to pray towards Jerusalem to the one true God daily. No matter what decree, no matter what day, when they're looking, when they are looking, it doesn't matter. He had a private conviction and habit that helped in the moment not just be a, what can I do? How can I stand up to this decree? No, it was just the continuing of a habit that he already had when no one was looking. And he had the courage to display it. What are those that we have? What are the private convictions that we need to stand on? Or that maybe we need to start? Because we all have hopes and desires that one day we'll have the moment that we can have the courage to show people who God is. But that has to start now when no one's looking. What is the small habit? I love the way James Clear talks about it in Atomic Habits. Maybe you've read it and it's not specifically for this, but the thing is we get into this all or nothing culture, right? It's like, if you're going to start to be a marathon runner, it's like, okay, like I have to do couch to marathon in 27 days or whatever, you can look that up. And it's like, okay, I have to do 5 miles and then I rest and then 7 miles. And you do all of these things and one day you mess up and then you stop because we all are nothing. And what James Clear says is, no, we get to this moment where we create the habit that becomes a part of who we are, that people then can see by one small thing a day. You want to be a marathon runner? Buy some shoes. Guess what? You're a marathon runner. Next day, put on the shoes. Guess you're a marathon runner. Next day, walk around the house in the shoes. You're a marathon runner. To the mailbox, to the end of the street, around the block, and you build just every day, but every day of it, you are a marathon runner. So that eventually that is built into that end goal. And that's what Daniel did. Daniel prayed every day. Not because he thought eventually they're going to look at him in the window and try to catch him, but just because this was a habit that became, I am a person of God and prayer. So here's my challenge and my question. What habit needs to start today? What private conviction in your life needs to start today? Is it a moment of prayer and just saying, you know what, I'm going to start with a sentence. And the next day it's going to be a couple of lines. And the next day it's going to be a paragraph. And the whole time and every day that habit and that conviction forms, you're going to tell yourself, I am a prayer warrior. Because you are. Maybe it's reading in his word. Like, I don't like reading. Well, listening to his word. And maybe that's where you start. and you listen to a verse, and then you listen to a paragraph, and then you listen to a chapter, and then you read a verse, and then you read a paragraph, and so on. And the entire time you are saying that I am devoted to God's word, because you are. You want to have that moment of standout courage. It starts right now with the habits that we form and the private conviction to who God is. Well, we're going to continue because the courage doesn't end there, and we'll see this on the screen. The second part of that for Daniel is bold courage trusts God more than consequences. See, Daniel trusted in God more than what might happen to him. He knew, if I pray, I could go to the lion's den. That's where I could end up. I'm going to go to verse 11, and we will read here. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying, asking God for help. So they went to the king, and they spoke to him about the royal decree. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human except for you, your majesty, would be thrown to the lion's den? And the answer is yes. And guess what they do? They tattle on him. They do. They're like, oh, well, guess what? Guess who did? Daniel. No. And the king doesn't like it because he likes Daniel because he can't find any fault in him. No one can. And he wants him to lead over the country. And he's like, no. And they are like, no, you cannot get out of this. This is a decree. So we see this in 6:16. It'll be on the screen. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. Here's the deal. Daniel knew what was coming, but he still took the courage and the bold step to trust in God, no matter what would happen. And we've seen that before in his life, and we've seen that in his friends of Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. We've seen this established, and he does it again, and he says, no matter what would come my way, I'm going to pray to God. I am a follower of God. His devotion was in the right place. What about us? I don't know about you. I have never been, with the consequence of being thrown into a lion's den. That has not ever been on the register or a bingo card that I've ever seen. But here's the deal. We do have consequences. Now, some of them we deserve, right? I may, have a little bit of a rebellious streak in me, and some of the consequences I have, they are due. But there are other consequences that happen in life because we are doing what is right, and maybe out of the habits and the private convictions of who God is. And sometimes we struggle. Do we do this, and do we face those consequences? Are you in a job where it's like, I don't know if I bring up Jesus, if I bring up my faith, if I bring up prayer, I don't know what will happen to me. Maybe you're in a relational context, in a family or a friendship that's like, man, if I talk too much about who God is, I don't know. And there are consequences. And here's the deal. I'm not telling you to run out these doors and just go try to, just blow the whole thing up. I'm just saying, do you trust God more than what might happen? And even if it does happen, will you still have the courage to stand up? I actually struggle with this. I'm just going to be honest with you. I learned from my kids a lot about courage. My daughter taught me this just actually a couple of weeks ago. Again, she is at a trade schooling to become a farrier, which is way more hard work than I ever want to be a part of. And I'm like, wow. But she's there. And there were some students that were saying some things that were pretty awful towards another student. And she told us a story where she said, I had to say something because it wasn't right. What they were saying was awful, and it was mean, and it was degrading. And she did, and what ended up happening is that started to get directed towards her. And she's telling us that, and she's upset about it, but she still knows it was the right thing to do, to deal with the consequence. No matter what they say towards her, but to stand up for what is right is what Daniel would show us. It's what we want. And it's what we should do. What is that moment that's waiting for you? And again, how are you preparing right now for it? So the third part of the courage that I see in Daniel will be on the screen. Godly courage influences others. Nothing about courage that is connected to God has to do with highlighting us. It only has to do with highlighting God. And that's the incredible thing. We see chapter 1 with Daniel, right? He goes, I'm not going to defile myself. I won't eat this food. Test me. They test him. He's stronger. They take the food away, and they're like, this is great. And what happens? The king celebrates who God is. What do we see in chapter 3 with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? It's like, hey, you can't do this. Or like, I'm not going to bow to this idol. And then they get thrown in the fiery furnace. They come out of the furnace, and what happens? Nebuchadnezzar praises God. They influenced a king. Well, the same thing happens in chapter 6. And I'm going to go to 19 just to show what happened in the story. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and he hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called Daniel in an anguished voice. Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue from the lions? And Daniel answered, may the king live forever. May my God send his angels and shut the mouth of the lions. He was rescued. And he wasn't rescued so Daniel could be praised. Daniel knows that. He was rescued because he had the courage, and this would be an opportunity to highlight God. And that is what happens. Because we see this in Daniel 6:26. I issue a decree that in every part of the kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. See, what he did, the courage that he had influenced those around him. And in this case, it was a king who had influence over a kingdom to say, guess what? We are going to praise the God of Daniel. We don't stand in courage for us. We help others see God through it. That's the importance. Now, here's the deal. Most of us ask, but I'm never going to have a moment like that, or I'm not going to be thrown in a lion's den, or it's not like I'm connected to like a king or anything like that. What does that look like? Well, I'm going to give you a real easy way to influence others. But I'm going to do it by telling you about a few people. I'll tell you about Miss Joan. Miss Joan was my 3rd and 4th grade kids' Sunday school teacher. And she was awesome. Like, she was great. And not just the candy, okay? Like, I'll throw that out there. That's not bad. But she loved us. And she highlighted for us so many amazing stories from God, and she poured her life into her private convictions at home in prayer and reading and studying and being prepared and living it out, but coming and teaching us. Chris and Jocelyn were awesome followers of Jesus that spent way too much time helping teenagers. Some of them that were pretty dumb. I can admit it. But they loved us, and they cared for us. And again, their private conviction to say that people and students and kids, they need to know about Jesus. They need to know about God. They need to know that they can step into this courage one day by starting the habits of connecting to him now. And they remind me of that. I'm reminded of my high school leader, Nate, who is now one of my best friends. I have known for a long time. And he, at that time, was getting a Latin degree because that's helpful, and at the University of Missouri. And he was going to be a lawyer, but he switched, and he was like, I'm going to go into student ministry, and he went to seminary, and he wanted to pour into others and help them know that you can step into the courage of God. So a lot of us, we say, so how do we do it? Like, what does this look like? One, you need to create the private habit now that's going to help you later. The second thing is you need to understand there are consequences to this boldness and this courage, but you have to be open-handed and trust God. And the third thing is you have to start influence others now. And I'm going to give you a real easy way. Because we have kids and we have students that are here as a part of Northside, and they need you. Just like I needed Miss Joan, just like I needed Chris and Jocelyn, just like I needed Nate. And they need your life to be an influence in theirs. We have kids, they're in the other side of the building right now. Some maybe even in the room. They need you to care for them, to teach them, to lead them, to guide them. And this isn't like out of a guilt. I'm just saying that, like, if we want to raise up Daniels, we've got to be pouring into the lives right now. And I'm going to make it real easy for you. All you have to do is start to serve. And it's going to be on the screen. You can actually text volunteer. This is the one time I'm going to say, get out your phones in church. It's okay. Now, this isn't this is just committing to a conversation and just hearing about it. Because the truth of it is our role in a multi-generational thing we call the church to help those that are younger than us. And as they grow, maybe you go with them. That's the great thing I love about our children in the student ministry is some of those teachers that we need to celebrate is they keep following year after year with those same students. But that means, guess what? There's space. There's space for you. An opportunity to be an influence in those who are going to change the world. What do we need to do? Start our private conviction. Release the care of the consequences. And honestly, start to serve and lead those right here with us that need us today. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for who you are, what you've done, and how you love us. You are amazing. We thank you for your grace and your spirit and your love. In your name, amen.
We stand together.